Witam serdecznie wszystkich Państwa na kanale klimatycznym. Dzisiaj w sobotę wieczór mam nadzieję, że mimo tego, że to jest dosyć wolny czas, to Państwo dołączą, bo mamy rzeczywiście bardzo wyjątkowego gościa, pani profesor Urge Vorsatz, pani profesor Diana Urge Vorsatz z Uniwersytetu Środkowoeuropejskiego, która jest wiceprzewodniczącą IPCC. Oczywiście rozmowa będzie miała miejsce po angielsku, więc muszą Państwo wybaczyć, że teraz przełączę się na język angielski. Okay, so I would like to welcome very much all our audience, English-speaking audience also. Today we talk about latest climate developments about temperature records with Professor Diana Urge Vorsatz from Central European University, who is also IPCC Vice-Chair. Hello.
Hi, thank you for the invitation.
Yeah, and thank you very much for being with us in a Saturday evening, which is of course, like free for everybody, but still, like you decided to join. So I'm really grateful. First of all, I would like to ask you about latest information coming also from IPCC, so Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change. When Jim Ski, who is the chair of IPCC, said that we really are not sure of the cause of latest temperature records, and that actually climate models didn't predict it, what we are seeing now. It actually sounds really concerning. I mean, does that mean that we really do not really know what is happening with our climate now?
I wouldn't fully say that, but it's true that there is a lot of scientific debate about what's happening right now with the climate. What we have seen that about last June, the climate-related indicators kind of stepped out of any normal range, and not only did they step out of the normal range, but they exceeded even previous records of exceedance. So sometimes monthly averages were over a whole half degree warmer than any previous record, which is an enormous value if we are talking about a global average for a whole month. So definitely that alarmed a lot of the scientists what's going on, because this rate of exceedance has not really been experienced since we are recording climate-related data. At the same time, to some extent, it was expected that last year would be record, since first of all we are experiencing global warming, so we are continuously experiencing warming, but this was superimposed upon an El Nino phenomena. If I don't know how much the viewers know, but this is a phenomena in the South Pacific Ocean, which influences in the end global climate. Now, at that time, actually, we thought that this El Nino will actually be a super El Nino, which means will be a very strong El Nino. So we kind of expected that temperatures would go up, but the temperatures actually started going up sooner than El Nino really kicked in. Now, by today, we understand that actually this El Nino wasn't that strong at all, and it's slowly tempering off. So we should kind of already see the temperatures returning more into the normal ranges. So, but they are not yet. Okay, March was a little bit less extreme as February. On the other hand, it's still very much out of the range. So most scientists think that the next few months are really going to say a lot about what's happening, because if you do see the values returning to more than, or at least closer to the normal range, then perhaps we can sigh out of relief that maybe this was just a little bit or the blip in climate, because if you look at also historical data, there have always been years which were kind of extreme either way, so either positive or negative way. So it could be just a period which is just out of the normal range, but that we would only be able to say that once first it returned to more in the normal range. what is important to say, just to add to your question, that this is not coming from the IPCC, because the IPCC assesses the science, and then we go through very rigorous review processes, and then we publish our reports. The last report, which was published, was 2 years ago, and a year ago, and so we cannot, and that was the synthesis report, which already summarizes our previous 3 assessment reports, last of which was published 2 years ago. So that means that we cannot, as IPCC, we cannot really say anything about the climate, because we really rely on a consensus among scientists. This is very important, because as we have just started discussing this, the scientific community itself is quite torn on what's really happening, and some scientists say we can fully explain, others say no, we cannot fully explain. Some claim that we are actually seeing an acceleration of warming. Others say, yes, true that we're seeing an acceleration, but actually we predicted this acceleration, and this is, although it's on the top of the end of what even the IPCC predicted, but it is within the range. Others are more cautious. Some think that they can explain this. As I said, so this is why we can say that what the different scientific communities are saying, but we cannot yet establish what is the scientific consensus, because that will only come through when we start writing the 7th assessment report, the working group 1 report of the 7th assessment report, which we are in the cycle, but it will only start towards the end of the year probably. So right now we can only say what the different scientists think.
We will get back to this topic of the next cycle, because it is also very important. But I would like to ask more about the latest records, because I also, like within causes which may add to this temperature rise, some scientists also mention the fact that we cut sulfur dioxide emissions through getting rid sulfur dioxide from vessels fuels, and as we know, sulfur dioxide is just like a pollution which actually has a cooling effect. So how do you estimate this theory? Is that reasonable to think that sulfur dioxide emissions cut might have caused the current temperature records?
Well, I think it's probably everyone agrees that they have contributed to these records, because we know that air pollution, aerosols, including sulfur dioxide, do have a certain cooling effect. And it is true that there is a new regulation, well, not so new, but since 2020, in the North Atlantic, the vessels crossing the North Atlantic have to meet much stronger regulations. So actually, we see that the air pollution has been decreasing. And we do see that it was one of the extreme values that we have seen in climate data was actually the temperature of the North Atlantic Ocean. So we do think that there is a correlation, and the reason why it would warm particularly much, because it would have warmed also earlier, but the aerosols have kind of damped that warming. And now that we have reduced that pollution, it now showed the real warming. Nevertheless, also, I think last week a new paper was published in, I think, Nature, which showed that probably we have been underestimating the impact of cooling from air pollution, and maybe it's actually bigger than we thought, and then that would kind of resonate with these extreme values. Nevertheless, the reason why I don't think we can just entirely say that we know that then it was the cleaning of air pollution that really caused this. There are a few reasons. One is that the regulation was in effect in 2020. So since then already, this cleaning up has been happening, yet this very strong and almost sudden effect of temperatures running away, quote unquote, running away, it really started last June. So, and also this really was experienced more in a couple of months. So if it really, that would have been the main reason, we would have seen a more gradual and more constant and more reliable warming as compared to and its region. And also it's really that regulation really affects mostly this region and not the rest of the world, where yet we see this impact in the whole world. So it definitely includes or contributes to these extreme temperatures, but it cannot explain it fully. But don't think anyone says that it's fully, because there are a couple of other things, or there are a couple of things, other things that are also happening which contribute to these high temperatures. We mentioned already El Nino, we mentioned already the reduction in air pollution. But at the same time, also there was a Tonga volcano that broke out recently. Now, normally, volcanoes actually emit sulfur dioxide and aerosols, which actually cool the climate. But this particular volcano eruption actually resulted in more water vapor emission, and water vapor is a stronger greenhouse gas. Then actually that's the most important greenhouse gas, because presently the water vapor is responsible for the vast majority of the greenhouse effect in the planet. But of course, that's kind of the baseline or normal. Then CO2 is only responsible for 2 degrees. But the point is that if we have additional water vapor, which is not normally there, that also contributes, probably that also contributed to this extreme warming. Another is the solar cycle. It's also now going towards more a maximum, and that also results in a slight warming right now. So roughly these factors together contribute probably to these extreme temperatures. Nevertheless, even if the scientists who calculated how much warming these individual effects can result in, they still cannot fully explain the entirety of the temperature increases that we have been seeing in the last couple of months. Again, that's nothing, it's not necessarily something to be alarmed of, from the perspective that temperatures have or always go up and down. On the other hand, the reason why I think it's really good that we're talking about this and that we do engage with this, because if, and there is a small chance that something is going on in the climate system that we don't fully understand, and maybe it's not worthwhile to just sit and wait. Maybe it is a really good alarm bell that, look, there may be something going on. It's really important that we now stop global warming. We act fast, because we are entering uncharted territories, as other climate scientists have said, and that is going to affect the economies fundamentally. And it's better to really step on the gas, and now quote unquote on the gas, meaning really slowing this ongoing warming.
Yes, exactly. It was Professor Gavin from NASA Goddard Center. He mentioned that maybe we are, are uncharted territory. So what would mean more or less that we crossed some so-called tipping points in climate system. Can we, exclude it, or it is still possible that we crossed some tipping point, what would be like a very, very terrifying information on the climate?
Right. Of course, it's always possible that there are some things that we don't fully understand, and there could be a tipping point which perhaps is running away that we haven't really understood yet. Nevertheless, the tipping points that we currently that are currently on our radar screens, so this meaning that we have been examining them, and we have been estimating the different values at which we are exceeding them and how soon they exert their impacts, if you look at them, none of them would exert their impact so fast, because there are a few tipping points which could actually really be unleashed or kick-started already at this temperature raise. So currently, on average, in a 20-year average, how we are measuring temperature increase, we are only at 1.2 degrees centigrade. So yes, on an annual basis, we are over 1.5 degrees centigrade if we really look at the past 12 months. But that's not how we measure it exactly, because the annual temperatures do go up and down. So we look at longer term averages, and that's only 1.2 degrees. At this temperature increase level, there are not a lot of tipping points that we see could really be. There is a small chance, but the very small risk. It's more beyond 1.5 degrees that more and more could be already unleashed. But the median value of where we would expect most of these tipping points actually is a bit higher. The one which is scientists do call tipping point, I'm not quite convinced why it's called a tipping point, is the suffering of the coral reefs, and that we probably already exceeded. It is between 1.5 and 2 degrees, and we do see the terrible coral bleaching event on the Great Barrier Reef now near Australia's shore. So that already is unfortunately happening, and probably it will. So we know that already at 1.5 degrees centigrade global warming, we will see, more, maybe 80% of corals roughly going extinct. And at 2 degrees, probably over 90% of coral is going extinct. So that's the only tipping point where we do see, first of all, the whole impact unleashed at low temperature increase, and it's already having an impact very soon. The other is, which has been also in the media a lot recently, is the AMOC, the Atlantic Meridional Overturning Circulation. Now there has been more and more papers claiming that maybe we are going towards a collapse of this ocean circulation system. This is in the Atlantic Ocean, and this is which is keeping Europe such nice and warm. If you look at, this is also, and often we conflate it with the Gulf Stream, but they are related, but not completely the same. We know that this circulation system has been slowing down, and we see the impact, but there's no scientific consensus that this would really be already going towards a collapse. There are scientific voices, and there is some evidence. We try to measure it in many different ways, because it's very hard to precisely measure an ocean current. So these are just a few methods that are warning us. But again, I don't think anybody has really claimed that this is going on. And if this is going on, that still takes 2 to 3 decades for that impact for us to fully be able to see. So that's why I don't really think it's a tipping point, but that we unleashed. Nevertheless, it can be, it could potentially be something in the global climate system that we don't fully understand, or we haven't understood as well as we should have. So we may need to adjust some of our science on this if these temperature trends continue and don't return to normal in the next few months.
Yes, and the IPCC chair, Jimsky, he said in Financial Times that we need more science, we need more research to understand it. And how do you think how fast we can have it? I mean, how fast we can have some final conclusions on that, what is happening now, how much more research we need, and how much time it will take?
The issue is that I think it's of course, research is pivotal. Nevertheless, it won't really give us final conclusions, because of the variability, the natural variability of climate. So it really, unfortunately, for us to be certain, we really would just need to wait and see, not sit back and wait and see, but do research and wait and see, and monitoring. Probably we may need to be trying to monitor better, let's say, ocean currents, the ice, or, for example, another interesting new emerging science is about the connection between microplastics and climate change. That microplastics have different albedo effect, meaning their reflective capacity is different than, for example, that of ice and snow. And since now we see that microplastics are in our clouds, in the rain, in the snow, even in Antarctica, in the most remote places in Antarctica, potentially this could also be changing the global albedo to some extent, and the reflective capacity. For example, these kinds of things could be contributing. We do need more monitoring and more research on this, but in order to conclude, we would need to see a longer trend in the temperature trends now, which are out of the ordinary, whether they continue that way, and to confirm that really something bad is happening, or we are just seeing more a normal variability.
Mm-hmm. And talking about research, we are actually before the next cycle, reporting cycle of IPCC. I would like to remind my audience that IPCC is like a global institution gathering scientists, preparing reports, which are then basis to make political decisions on energy and climate policy. And those reports are, like scientific basis to prepare them. So could you tell us more, Diana, about the next cycle, when it starts, and when we will know like conclusions, and on what IPCC will be working in this cycle?
Yes, thank you very much. So the IPCC's mandate is to assess the science and in an objective way, and help decision makers navigate the sometimes seemingly contradicting or just confusing information. Like probably some of you, the viewers, are also confused between potentially information that may seem to be contradictory. So that's our purpose. What we do is we publish so-called assessment reports. So we have already published 6 of these. It takes about 7 years to complete a full assessment report cycle, because we have to be very rigorous. We have to make sure that we include all the different scientific perspectives that are out there, and we have to listen to all scientists who may have different inputs. So it takes a long time to be really rigorous and consensus based. Now, we have just started the 7th assessment cycle, which was the elections for this took place last July. And we are just starting the writing of our first report, which will be on cities and climate change science. I'm privileged to be leading the scientific steering committee of the scoping meeting. The scoping meeting is going to take place actually from Monday in Riga, Latvia. And that's where we are going to plan what should be the content of this report. So cities will be a very important focus in this cycle. This cycle, we are not going to produce a lot of special reports. In the previous cycle, we had 3 special reports, and the viewer might remember that one of them got really very, very famous, our global warming of 1.5 degrees centigrade, which has been still quoted a lot, and it was very popular in the media. We also had one report on oceans and one on land. Now, in this cycle, we will only have one on cities, and then the assessment report, which has 3 volumes, one on the physical science basis, so where we are going to look at exactly the questions that we have been discussing until now. The second volume will be on impacts and vulnerability and adaptation, and report 3 is mitigation, or what can we do about climate change. Now, and then finally, synthesis report. The synthesis report will be published in late 2029, and we hope that we can publish the others all before the next global stocktake, which is a really important process under United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. and
maybe let's explain what is this, the global stock because I think that not everybody knows about that.
Yes, exactly. So the United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change is the UN's body, which is leading all the negotiations, the international UN negotiations on the climate. Within this, perhaps the most important agreement is so-called the Paris Agreement, which was concluded in 2015. And that mandates that every 5 years we examine our progress towards meeting the goals of the Paris Agreement and our national targets. And the first global stocktake actually took place in last December in Dubai, at the last conference of the parties, COP, and the climate summit. That's how many of them call it. And the next one will be 2028. I mean, not the summit, but the next such global stocktake. So that's when we are again going to assess how well we are doing towards our targets of the Paris Agreement, and we want to contribute with our reports to this international reflection.
Yeah, so thanks to this, we know where we are as it comes to climate policies. And the first questions from our audience have appeared, so maybe I will display them. First one is from Richard Peya. Hello. Does the rich people consumption contribute to the climate change in any significant way? I have seen hate from some random celebrities that they fly a lot. But I think the solution should be centered on the social level, not moralizing about what some individuals do. How would you comment on that?
I think this is a very important question. And we did publish in our latest report, the Working Group 3 report of the IPCC 6% report, that we showed that the top 10% of the population contributes over half of all emissions. At the same time, the entire poorer half of the globe only is responsible for 1/10 of all emissions. If we are even talking about even to really the global elite, so the top 1%, just 1%, so just fewer responsible for 15% of emissions. So yes, it is true that the lifestyles of the top population is disproportionately affecting the climate. So I think this is very important. Not the IPCC, but I do think that we would need much better climate policies, because presently climate policies are affecting or hurting disproportionately the poorer half of the population, who couldn't even really reduce their emissions very much because they are already emitting little. Because this is true also within our countries. If we look at each country in the European Union, it's also true that our top 1%, our top 15%, top 10%, excuse me, is emitting significantly more than our top. For example, in Hungary, the bottom 50% emits less than 2.5 tons per year. So that's really very little. And so then we start to understand why we have the protests now in Germany by the agriculture, by the farmers, why we had the yellow vests in France. So I think we need to be much more careful that the policies don't even let's try not even affecting them, but I would rather focus on policies which really are focused on the top 10% or even top 1%. But it's hard because we are often also in the top 10% and top 1%. So it's hard for us to introduce policies against ourselves. So it's a little bit difficult. Now, yes, especially the very top ones that the viewer who asked the question referred to, I think it is a serious problem, because not only because they themselves emit a lot, and flying is definitely a very high contributor to their extremely high emissions, especially private jets. But in fact, it turns out the latest study showed that their yachts actually emit even more than their flights. So their cruise ships and luxury yachts are even more contributing to our warming. But I do think that this needs to be addressed, not only because excuse me, because this is a lot of emissions, but also because they are celebrities, they are exemplary. Their lifestyles are dreamed about by the rest of the world. We all want to be like them, and they are displaying these lifestyles as something very desirable. And that way, it's very difficult for us or for climate or policymakers and scientists to try to keep the population that, look, that's really not a good idea, because if we all try to be like them, we are frying ourselves very, very fast. So so that's why I think it is a problem. And it's true that we shouldn't be against individuals, but I do think that we do need to pressure or put the pressure on all of those in the global elites to reduce their private jet related emissions, as well as yacht and other luxury emissions.
I encourage my audience to ask more questions, and I will display the next one from Esperanza. She asks, does IPCC list and observe climate feedback loops?
Yes, thank you very much. So basically, I think if I understand the question well, this is a little bit also what we are calling tipping points, but true that it's not completely the same. So I suppose you're talking about feedback loops, for example, if in the in Siberia and in the permafrost, as it is thawing, we see more and more methane escaping from the ground, and methane is a very strong greenhouse gas. So the more we warm, the more methane we release, which is in turn help warming the climate more. This is definitely a feedback loop. So we do examine these. Nevertheless, for example, we see this doesn't yet become a tipping point, meaning it doesn't run away, because the tipping point is that once we, even if we stop any warming or stop any emissions of further greenhouse gases, it still would continue, because we just couldn't stop. That we expect, for example, for methane happening at much higher temperature, global warming levels than what we are now. There are many other feedback loops. For example, one which is interesting is related to actually cooling. The hotter and hotter it is, and now we are, I think in Poland also, it is still a very, very hot a few weeks, which now we enjoy in the spring, but it will be terrible when also in the summer it's 15 degrees warmer than normal on an average level. So then we start air conditioning. Now air conditioning emits more greenhouse gases, not only contribute to the global warming, it accelerates global warming more, and then we air condition more, but also local warming. Because what happens is when we air condition, we actually put the same amount of heat that is in the buildings out on the streets. So that means locally we contribute to the urban heat island effect. So our cities are going to be even warmer. So we need even more air conditioning that emits more heat and more greenhouse gases. So this is also feedback loop. So yes,
it's like a vicious circle. It's like a
exactly.
vicious circle.
Exactly. So these are these vicious circles. So if I understood the question, there are these vicious circles. We do try to examine all of these, but I don't think it's possible to include all of them in climate modeling. But certainly models are getting better and are able to account for more and more of these.
Getting back to latest temperature records and the fact that we are really not certain about the cause of them, I'm concerned about whether politicians really are aware of it, because the scientific world has been talking about this, I think, for at least 2 months, but I didn't see any comment from any global leader. So do you think that this information, reached up to them, or not necessarily?
Well, I think it's a good question, and it is true that we have not really been hearing any reflections from the political sphere. Nevertheless, I think it's also difficult for politicians because it's not certain what's happening, whether it's only natural cycles or it's really something is happening. On the other hand, if I were a politician, I would use this as an opportunity to say, look, we could be entering our territories. The precautionary principle says we don't want to wait and see if this is really something bad, but we really need to use this as a signal, as a warning sign that that there could be that it's not going the right way. We really need to stop warming where it is, and now there are even so many really attractive and economic and socially desirable ways how we can fight global warming. So let's really rather focus on these more and unleash them and adopt them society-wide rather than resist climate action.
And we have another question from our audience, and it actually concerns climate misinformation. And I wanted to ask about that too, because I think that, you know, like I have seen recently even some interesting research that more temperature rise, more misinformation, especially in social media, we have, yeah. So we have a question. Hi, I think some funds should be allocated to fighting climate disinformation. Big media do not cover this topic. However, social media is full of disinformation. This is really harmful because it manipulates public opinion and influences political decisions.
Absolutely. And I think it's really a very important concern. For example, I'm on Twitter, and fortunately, some of my tweets have been picked up last week by The Guardian and some influential international media. Immediately, the climate skeptics were on my account. And I think actually part of this must be robots as well, because literally in these occasions when my tweets are being picked up, then literally there are hundreds of accounts suddenly displaying totally false information. Suddenly, oh, climate is actually cooling, and there is a graph. Even graphs are there, which show very different and unreal data, which show spread disinformation. And of course, for the normal average reader, it's very difficult to navigate and distinguish what is real and what is not real. And I think because of artificial intelligence, it's going to be even more difficult. So I think it's a real threat to not only to climate change, but to our democracies, to everything, because disinformation is getting smarter and smarter, and those who are interested, who have a vested interest in spreading this misinformation, they are getting also smarter and better at spreading that. So I think it's a very serious risk. In fact, I'm participating in a very interesting expert group, United Nations expert group on foresight. So what are the big issues facing the world? And we will publish our report in September for the Global Futures Summit in New York. Nevertheless, and I can't, of course, give out all our findings, but one of the interesting things is that if we do very serious research around the world, there is a very so one of the few things that people are most worried about is exactly misinformation, and in general AI enabling more misinformation, undermining even democracies, and also, of course, any science-related, evidence-based decision-making. So I think it is a big problem, and personally, unfortunately, I don't know the solution to this, and this is very, very scary.
Yeah, and I think as many scientists also argue that this misinformation machine is fueled by fossil fuels companies, unfortunately. So this is completely incredible. And now, you know, I even see the race of, you know, like publications, books, like for instance, the latest, the book of Kunin.
Yeah, sorry.
The book of Kunin, who is like a famous climate denialist, has been recently translated to Polish. And you know, like in the social media, we have discussion about whether this kind of book should be published or not. And I said, come on, guys, it's like a joke. I mean, how you can publish something like that? I was blocked by edition by publisher commenting on that because he said something like, okay, but we should discuss about other, like different options and different opinions. And I said, like science is not opinion; it's a matter of fact. Yeah, you
Exactly.
cannot just discuss with facts. Yeah,
Exactly.
and
Exactly.
but I was terrified that something like it happens, and that like majority of people, they do not have any problem about that, and they criticize me because I decided to to put true that this book is written by climate denialist and that the guy who actually worked for BP concern.
Yes, exactly. This is happening. I think I forgot the title, but there is this new movie on climate,
Yeah,
and it's making quite a big impact, and that includes all the very typical tricks of the climate denials and lies and misinformation related tricks, how we can make mistakes related to the climate, which have all been already debated, but still this film also includes. So yes, absolutely, it's still coming, and it is very sad. Nevertheless, actually, what I see now is only, if not more serious, but equally serious risk is the other side, is that not denying, and actually it can be, there has also been publications which say the deniers also going into now the catastrophists. So the new narrative is that the civilization will end very soon, there is nothing to do, no solution works, solutions don't work, and we are going to collapse very soon, and now all we can do is just adapt or adaptation and just focus on ourselves and so on, and that's also very dangerous. So both ends are very dangerous. So because both will result in inaction or lack of action or confusion or depression, and none of them are good. So yes, it is very difficult to keep the objective, neutral, evidence-based discourse related to climate change that we really need in this era.
yeah. I'm sorry. The movie you mentioned is just Climate, the movie, and it was also spread in Poland very broadly, and also it was discussed. And of course, climate denialists used it as an argument to say, look, like scientists, they lie, and we have the movie which says what is true. And that's I also was terrified. And we have another question on the same topic, actually, from our audience. When are we going to sue fossil fuel companies and people who spread lies?
I think that's a really good question. What we do see is that there is a lot of success in courts related to climate-related lawsuits. This week, a major winning case has been major case has been won by Swiss old ladies, which is important. So far, the young people's case has not been won, but it doesn't mean that it was not right. Just that they didn't submit their excuse me, I had to quote their case to the national governments first. But there are a larger and larger number of lawsuits against governments, companies, and so on. And it is true that we do need a mechanism where companies cannot go without being facing consequences of spreading misinformation or financing research to spread false information. So already in the sixth assessment report of the IPCC, we have also documented what the scientific literature says about that companies have unfortunately been shown to. So there is clear evidence that the fossil fuel industry has been trying to change science on this. So even the science is clear about this.
And that's great, because actually they should take responsibility for, very for those actions, and because those actions, I have impression, also make the process of energy transition not faster but slower, yeah, and that's the problem. But I'm also wondering why actually the governments do not put funds to organize massive campaign on climate change, on what is it, like I think that especially in the West, that governments, especially in countries where we have public media, should just pump money to inform people what the climate change is and what are the threats caused by climate change, which are actually now very harmful, and all of us we can see them, we can feel them, and I'm wondering why it hasn't been done yet.
Well, that's a very good question. And I think also the whole education system. In many countries, climate change is not appropriately integrated into education materials. And the teachers who are teaching different subjects, which should cover climate change adequately, they have never been taught about this, because when they were in universities and colleges, then this wasn't yet the case in the science, and this wasn't that advanced. So definitely we need more, much more effort into awareness raising and information. And I think there is, I don't think we can generalize, because I think there are many countries where climate awareness and climate related information, science and knowledge is at quite high levels, but then in other countries it is not. Probably there are reasons behind this. Also, I think it's just generally many governments struggle with how to respond to climate change, because on one hand, they are aware this is a problem, and I think most governments do say that we need to do something about this, and they do have also serious commitments, both cities and companies and governments. But on the other hand, they also realize that if they are stepping on the gas on this or accelerating climate action, then they would have faced some economic consequences, because in many countries, the fossil fuel related companies and industries are strong in terms of, for example, major taxpayers. They give a lot of jobs. They are among the major employers. Poland, we are talking Poland, definitely the fossil or the coal industry has gives a lot of employment, a lot of security, and also they're important taxpayers. So they're just foundations of those countries' economies. And even if governments know that that's not the right way and they should discontinue this, but at the same time, if they do hurt these industries, also the national income will get reduced. Also, their important allies in many things they will lose. So, and they may result in social unrest. For example, Germany and all the Yellow Vest in France. So altogether, I think it's difficult for governments to see how to accelerate climate action without actually resulting in losing their voters or having social unrest. So I think this is the problem.
Yeah, but I think that education would definitely help, because if you have a society which understands the problem, it's easier to just push forward some changes. We have another question from our audience. There are papers where scientists calculated that burning 1,000 tons of coal equal additional one dead before 2100. Every action which slows transformation to net zero can be calculated to how many people will die because of it.
Exactly. I'm not sure about the numbers, the numbers that have been cited, but definitely we are also doing these kinds of calculations, and it's true that we know that a certain amount of emissions will result in roughly an estimatable amount of deaths, or not only deaths, but disabilities and economic losses. And I think exactly that this is the kind of communication that we should increase, the very concrete types of communication, because it's more difficult for people to really grasp, okay, how many degrees have been warming, and what is so these very global big issues. Nevertheless, for example, these facts that have been just been cited, or also um, the, for example, what has become very popular in, for example, Czech Republic, is when they looked at the impact of climate change on their beer production and whether they will be able to drink still their favorite beers in a few decades under higher climate change scenarios. So if we bring the abstract and complex and scary climate science down to people's lives, everyday lives, and to metrics that they understand. They understand death, they understand illnesses, they understand beer, they understand their things, the price of bread, for example, inflation. There is a lot of studies now how climate change is now fueling our inflation that is happening globally, but especially in our region as well. So if we understand these connections better, that we see in our everyday lives, I think this will make it easier for people to understand that, yes, we do need action, even if some of that may not be as desirable as one would want. But we can prevent much more suffering, much more economic damage, much more loss of lives.
Yes, exactly. And like, I think that all those changes are visible. Listing only 3 events from the latest time, like for instance, first of all, the record high cocoa prices. So it means that we will eat like very, very expensive chocolate. The second one, like last week, I think that British farmers, they said that because of floods, probably this year won't be harvest. I mean, they just will not have them. And Bogota is now experiencing terrible drought, what means that people are asked not to use water and just not to take shower. I mean, it is terrifying, actually. And like, how people can deny still that nothing happens.
Exactly. Or just what we see in the Mediterranean, the extreme level of the warming and the increasing frequency of droughts in the Mediterranean. And currently the Mediterranean is the fruit basket of Europe and the vegetable garden of Europe in most of our winter, but also in summer. This is the region that supplies most of our vegetables and fruits. Now, this is the area which is the most vulnerable, actually, to the in terms of climate change between 1.5 degrees and 2 degrees centigrade. So just half a degree warming will have the biggest negative delta impact, or the most change in this region in terms of droughts and water availability. Already now, as you also gave an example, but we also see that if there is a big drought in Spain and Portugal, then we see that British supermarkets run empty of fruits and vegetables because we just cannot produce. Unfortunately, this is going to happen more and more frequently because it is inevitable that in the Mediterranean is running drier. So yes, it is about our food. It is about the basis of our economies. What we also see that in California and many US states, homes are becoming uninsurable. Insurance companies are just leaving and they are saying, I'm sorry, I'm not insuring. I'm not working here anymore because it is impossible to charge enough for me to still be profitable despite the significantly increasing risks related to wildfires and floods and all other different extreme climate events. So yes, I think we should start to understand that this is not about polar bears. This is not about our grandchildren. but this is happening to us now, and it is already hurting our economies. But these are only the appetizers. These are only the warning signals. When it starts to cut our economic productivity and economies and lives much more significantly.
Exactly. And we have another question. Apologies for being late. Could you please explain to me, like I'm 10 years old, why 420 ppm with all following consequences for EE, why albedo, SST, SLR is not too late to save biosphere and humanity?
No, you are not late at all. It's because humanity and biosphere also has some adaptive capacity. And what we think is that this is still, or even perhaps 450 ppm, if the other viewers don't understand, this is, so in the before the Industrial Revolution, our carbon dioxide concentrations were about 280 ppm. Now we are at 420 ppm. And what scientists have asked that we try to stop the increase of carbon dioxide concentrations at about 450, roughly. So of course, this is not going to be without negative impacts. It is definitely, we are already seeing a lot of negative impacts, and with increasing warming, we will see more negative impacts. But first of all, we right now don't see it very realistic that we could return to 280. It just would cost, even if we potentially have the technologies, that would cost so much that we don't see that anyone would pay that money, because if still 2 billion people don't have access to clean energy, billions still don't have access to clean water, drinking water, sanitation, their sewage is just around them. So when we still have such fundamental problems in the world, that even if you have billions or trillions of dollars available, who would say that first we should just rather restore all climate rather than first, give the basic human, just the supply or meet the basic human needs of billions of people. So we just have to accept some level of warming. But we hope that still, if we can keep climate change at about 1.5 degree warmer than pre-industrial average, we hope that we will not unleash any of the tipping points, and we hope that we are resilient enough that with technologies, with methods, with behavioral change, and our adaptive capacity, we and ecosystems can adopt potentially to that warming level yet. But it's definitely not going to be easy, and there will be definitely losers, and there will definitely be still a lot of deaths.
Yeah, but this is still worth it, because we need to, save our civilization. I think that we have no choice. And this will be, my final question, I think, because we are going to the end of this conversation today. So if anybody has any questions, so please ask this question now. And I would like to ask you, what would you say to people who have actually two different attitudes? One approach is, no, the climate science is wrong, nothing happens, we do not have any climate change, or if we have it, actually is not caused by human being activity. And the second one is this, what you mentioned, those people are called doomers, if I'm not mistaken. Oh, it's too late, it doesn't make any sense to do anything because we cannot save us.
Right. Well, I think I'm not too engaged anymore with skeptics, because what I see, there are so many good solutions which address the climate, which also help us live better, healthier, in more livable cities, in cleaner air. We also our social welfare and increase our well-being. So maybe we don't need to persuade everyone about the climate. What we need to persuade them about is that we should have better cities, better planned cities, 15-minute cities where everybody can get to anywhere they really need on a daily basis in 15 minutes. And if they need a longer trip, there should be really efficient, safe, and affordable public transport system. For example, that results in a lot of active possibility for active mobility, which means we will have livable cities because we have more greenery, because we have more space. Getting rid of 95% of parking spaces will result in much more livable cities, much more safe biking lanes, safe walking places, much more social areas for meeting, and which can also address the current other huge crisis, the mental health crisis, especially in the young people. It's terrible what's going on. If we have more community, more space for people for build stronger community, we will address many issues at the same time. If there are people more active when getting from A to B, then they are also going healthier, both physically and mentally, because physical activity and the exposure of nature on a regular basis, like trees, parks, helps also mental health. So I think we should just rather focus on the lot of great solutions that we have and implement them, and then we don't need to persuade anyone. Just have a more livable and better world.
I think that we have like just one. I'm sorry, somebody's calling me, but I'm not going to answer.
I thought it was because of the time, the alarm.
So the last question from the audience, and it actually concerns the scientific research. So I think that together with this question, we should also explain a bit about what does this research say. And it's thank you. Last question from me. Why Hansen at all papers plus 10 degrees Celsius in the pipeline didn't meet a lot of attention. So maybe we can say more about this research also.
I'm not sure we could say it didn't reach a lot of attention. In the scientific community, there was a lot of attention paid to this paper. There is a lot of debate in the scientific community, some saying that we knew that before, that climate change is accelerating. It is, and it could be that we are accelerating more than we thought. Others are still, there are always, that's why that's why when science is good, that there are different positions, different results, different evidence, because we are looking at different ways and the same thing. So I think we need a bit more evidence towards these whether really something very bad is going on or not. Nevertheless, the reason I think why a lot of scientists are cautious, because that discourse often goes towards solar radiation management. So that means that, wow, this is really bad. We have no other thing to do. The only our own solution is to deploy solar radiation management or modification techniques. But that is not only very risky, because currently we know very little about these techniques. Second of all, it's like they are like pills against a flu or an illness, a painkiller. So if you're sick, you can take medicine just to suppress your symptoms, but you're still sick. And in fact, you're getting sicker and sicker, but these pills just suppress your symptoms constantly. But once these are taken away, then suddenly there will be giant increase in your illness, and you realize that you're very, very sick. So this is why I think just a lot of the scientific community is very cautious about this, and would prefer to still pull the lever of mitigation and emission reduction, so that we really solve the root of the problem, rather than just some symptomatic methods to minimize or to reduce temporarily the impact in potentially questionable or risky ways.
Diana, thank you very much that you joined us this evening. and it was really great pleasure to host you. I would like to remind you, I have hosted today Professor Diana Urge Vorsatz from Central European University and IPCC Vice-Chair. Please just don't leave now, because I would like to take some picture, and in the meantime I will also say goodbye to my audience in Polish. Szanowni Państwo, bardzo serdecznie dziękuję za dzisiejszy udział. No już niestety nasz czas dobiegł końca. Jeżeli podoba Wam się ten kanał, jeżeli chcecie go wspierać, zapraszam na Patronite'a. Dzięki temu też tłumaczenia na język polski takich jak dzisiaj filmów będą możliwe. A następny odcinek już we wtorek o 19:30. Moim gościem będzie pan Robert Jerzke-Skobize i będzie mówił o systemie ETS. A na dzisiaj to już koniec. Dziękuję bardzo.